The Jaguar XJ was first produced in 1968 and continued for 51 years, with the X351 being the final generation, produced and sold from 2010 to 2019. After this, the brand decided to axe the model and shelve any replacement, stating that it is no longer part of Jaguar's future vision. The X351 was designed by Ian Callum, who has a plethora of exquisite vehicles attached to his name, including the Jaguar F-Type, Aston Martin DB7, DB9 and Vanquish, along with the Ford Escort Cosworth and Ford Puma, to name a few. The X351 was conceived under the ownership of Tata, having purchased the brand in 2008 and then merging the Jaguar and Land Rover names in 2013. This reformed the Jaguar Land Rover partnership that had been split with BMW and Ford's ownership of the Land Rover brand. The X351 was both wider and longer than its predecessor, the X350 and X358 that was sold between 2003 and 2009. Many viewed the latest XJ as a step forward of modernisation for the Jaguar brand. The interior now clad in leather, LED lights, metal switchgear and a touchscreen media system. For many, the changes were welcome, as it appealed to a larger customer base than the buttons, wood and simpler design of its predecessor. First, there was the X351 Jaguar XJ as it was officially launched, featuring the claw-style rear lights and conventional xenon headlights. This design was replaced in two stages, initially with a minor update in 2014 that updated the suspension on long wheelbase models and made some minor tweaks to the exterior styling, along with adding a start-stop function to the engines for efficiency. A year later, a much more pronounced facelift happened, making the difference between the 2014 and 2015 update obvious. These included J-Blade lights, LED headlights, an array of driver's assistance upgrades to include adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist. There was also a semi-automated parking feature and 360-degree camera added. Although we don't do politics at the miles driven, as we prefer to stay in our lane, driving smoothly in the world of cars, it would be remiss of us not to mention the role Jaguar and the XJ has played in British politics. It has long been the official car of many Prime Ministers of both sides and is usually seen in armoured Sentinel edition, mixed between an array of Land Rover and Range Rovers belonging to close protection forces. Jaguar has also been the preferred car of choice of other politicians throughout the years. Much like the Range Rover, the Jaguar XJ sets itself apart on the road with a presence that suggests power, and the advertising campaigns have leaned into this along the way, associating the XJ as the transport of those with private jets and those that work in glass towers. First in our buyer's guide are the parts that you should look out for no matter what age, specification or engine you buy for your XJ. Early models are reported to have corrosion appear on the runners for the sunroof. This is easily identified and, if resolved early, shouldn't cause any further issues. However, if the problem is left to degrade, then it can cause a variety of headaches and an expensive repair bill. The ICT and ICTP, which stand for In Control Touch and In Control Touch Pro, have had a variety of software and hardware problems. However, we should stress that the frequency of these issues was hard to pin down, and owners' forums appear split on how common the issue arises in the XF and XJ, with some suggesting that the Jaguar F-Pace is actually the model that is of particular concern. Either way, before purchase, we suggest playing around with the media system and checking it operates as expected. Electrical issues are vastly improved over previous generations, to the point where failures appear as common as any other similarly prestige vehicle. Top of the list of complaints were issues with the central locking system. Batteries that are reaching the end of their life have been pinpointed to be the possible culprit, as their weakened state can cause the electrical system to not have the power reserves it needs and throw a fault code. To avoid this, we suggest keeping an eye on the battery health, and instead of waiting for it to be in urgent need of replacement, look to replace it once it starts recording a suboptimal power reserve. Doing so may mean spending a few hundred and avoiding spending a few thousand further down the line. Low-level vibrations have been reported. None are the primary ride, but instead noticed in the secondary ride. If you notice any vibrations on a test drive, budget for suspension work, as it is likely either a bushing or a linkage that has worn and is in need of replacement. Finally, some owners have reported gearbox hunting at lower speeds, particularly on earlier models. As these are the older of the X351 generation, a gearbox oil service should be the first action. If this doesn't resolve the issue, then speak to a specialist in engine computer management or mapping, all too often just called tuners or mappers. These places may specialise in getting more power from an engine by remapping the ECU, but with so many new cars now coming with automatic gearboxes, many can now work on gearbox computer mapping. They may be able to see an issue in the software and program in a resolution. The final option would be to visit the dealer to check if there has been any software or hardware updates and recalls, although we are unaware of any as at the time we create this guide. As ever, we try to be thorough, but our lists are non-exhaustive. So if you've had a Jaguar XJ and know of any other common issues, please add them in the comments below. Now on to the engines. First up is the diesel. The XJ gets the 3-litre TDV6 producing 271 brake horsepower in early versions and 295 brake horsepower in later models, and gets 46.3 and 48 miles per gallon respectively. It had been a development from an earlier 2.7 TDV6 used in the Jaguar S-Type and early versions of the Jaguar XF. The earlier 2.7 version has a known issue of oil pump housing and catastrophic failure of the crankshaft in Land Rovers. The 3-litre didn't appear to resolve this issue, however failures are much less common. We would also stress that the 2.7 and 3-litre TDV6 engines in Jaguars share a block with Land Rover, but a large variety of the ancillary items are different, and the power outputs are also different. The engines in the Jaguars live a much less stressed life in general, due to not lugging around as much weight, but you should still be diligent of the known issues, which are faulty oil level sensors and EGR valves either blocking, failing, or causing a fault code, needing either replacement or cleaning. The 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo engine is a Ford EcoBoost unit and kicks off the petrol range. It was offered in the later models as a replacement to the Supercharged 3-litre V6 and produces 237 brake horsepower with an average consumption of 33.2 miles per gallon. Low pressure and high pressure fuel pumps have been known to fail, although the number of times this has happened to one that's fitted to a Jaguar XJ is very small, although this may be due to the relative rarity of the engine of all models sold. Coolant pipes should be checked for signs of aging, as they are known to fail in several of the Ford applications of this engine and can cause overheating issues. We would stress that the faults with the 2-litre EcoBoost are better recorded with the more common vehicles it was fitted to, and very few issues have been recorded by Jaguar owners, but again this is likely due to the relative rarity, and by the time the engine arrived in the XJ, many of the earlier issues had become known in other applications. The 3-litre Supercharged engine produced 335 brake horsepower with an average of 31 miles per gallon. Coolant issues relating to the pipework and leaking valve cover gaskets were the most common issues, although a faulty insulator spring in the supercharger have also been reported, with owners noticing a knocking noise at the front of the engine. When reporting on the engine in the LR4 or Land Rover Discovery 4, we found cases of the timing chain guides needing replacing under warranty in earlier models, but couldn't find as common reports in the Jaguar XJ. But being that the block is in relation to the 5-litre V8 that suffered a similar issue, it is worth checking. As ever, we stress that our guides are common issues, however a common issue can be less than 1% of all cars sold, and so you should be diligent but not nervous searching for an XJ. Finally, the 5-litre V8, which was offered both in naturally aspirated and supercharged form, produced either 385 brake horsepower with a recorded 25 miles per gallon, or in supercharged form 502 brake horsepower, recording 25.5 miles per gallon. The engine is considered fairly robust, especially in its application in the Jaguar XJ. Problems can stem from faulty timing chain guides, many of which were repaired by Jaguar under warranty. But if there is no evidence of a repair, listen for any chain rattle. Running these engines with faulty timing chain guides can lead to catastrophic engine failure. We should note that this engine was also offered in the XJR, first producing 545 brake horsepower and then 575 brake horsepower in the late and now highly collectible XJR 575 model. Due to the XJ being a luxury executive transport vehicle, it isn't surprising that an armoured version was produced, and is the specification that politicians and high-ranking business people would have been supplied. These are referred to as Sentinel, and although considerable weight was added, the XJ was ahead of its time in weight saving, using aluminium extensively to keep the weight of the standard version down, and can still speed away from trouble at a relatively brisk pace. Specification on the XJ is ample, and all trim levels and the market you look at for an XJ will dictate the trim available. Luxury specification being an entry model, and from there is the premium luxury, portfolio, autobiography, R Sport and the XJR 575, with a large number of buyers opting for premium luxury or portfolio specification. There is also the ultimate model that was available in selected countries. Depending on your home market, it will make a difference to the standard specification that is offered on each trim level, with the 1200 watt stereo remaining an option for some buyers, or standard in the UK for buyers of the portfolio models. Options can also be ticked for lower specification models, but portfolio trim for several markets will include 20-inch wheels instead of the 19-inch wheels that are on the premium luxury, along with seat massage functions and reversing camera. We have split our choice into two as ever, first starting with the 3-litre diesel in premium luxury specification. These will offer a great value of choice for those that want XJ ownership without some of the more expensive running costs. Although diesel models of early XJs may fall into diesel restriction zones in the UK or mainland Europe. Our most expensive choice would be the portfolio model with the 5-litre supercharged V8. It won't be quite as quick as an XJR or XJR 575, but on the road it will probably be the more comfortable choice. We would usually say goodbye and subscribe now, but we felt the XJ deserved a little bit more from us. We attempt to remain unbiased in all our buyer's guides at the miles driven. However, as there appears to be a vanishing hope of an XJ returning, we would like to say a fond farewell to a truly iconic vehicle. Having had the privilege to get behind the wheel of 3 different generations in previous automotive endeavours, the XJ has a character that is so often lost in the serious styling and brutish character of uber-powerful saloons. Perhaps the XJ has bowed out of the ring at the right time. In a world where money shouts, cars have become more pronounced in their styling, screaming through the designer's pen to look at them and their bundles of cash that they represent with a middle finger to subtlety and nuance. Meanwhile, the Jaguar XJ was happy to whisper past and on to a quiet exit. The XJ sits in a class of its own because it is a class of its own. Farewell XJ, farewell.